He used to ask me why I drew a star every night. I told him it was so the dark would know which way home was. I am 71 years old. I live in a saltbox cottage on the coast of Maine. The lighthouse beam still sweeps across my porch every evening, the way it has since the year I was born. There is a leather journal on my writing desk. It is the 17th one. On most of the pages in the bottom right corner, you will find a small pencil star, 5 points. Drawn slowly, drawn the same way for 40 years. But there are 7 years in this book where I drew nothing at all. And the boy under the blanket beside me, leaning his small shoulder against mine, while the lighthouse turns through the fog, he is the reason I started again. It began on an ordinary afternoon, spring of 2011. I was 57, walking out of Penobscot Bay School for the last time, carrying a cardboard box of farewell cards. 38 years of 4th grade. I had taught the children of children I had taught. I had been faithful to small things, and I thought small things would now be faithful to me. I was right and I was wrong. I would not understand the shape of either for 14 years. My cottage sits where the road bends toward the lighthouse. The kitchen smelled, as it always did, of yeast bread and salt air. There was a note on the table in my son's handwriting. Stew in fridge. Be home Friday. -D. He was 25 then. David. He had moved back the year his father died. He had parked his pickup in my drive one afternoon with a duffel and a marine biology degree, and said he had taken a position studying the eelgrass beds. He said the eelgrass needed him more than the academy did. I think he meant that I needed him. Friday came. David came up the gravel drive carrying a duffel and a fistful of beach roses, the pink kind that grow wild on the dunes. He always brought roses. He never said why.
Hi, Mom. Thought you might be hungry on a Friday. I noticed long ago you always are. Still drawing your stars, I see. That is good. That is good.
He set the roses in the chipped blue vase. He noticed the journal on the writing desk. He always noticed it. He picked it up, careful not to wake the page. He had asked me once, when he was 8, why I drew them. I told him it was the kind of habit that helps you find the door in the dark. He nodded the way 8-year-olds nod when they have decided to trust an answer that does not fully fit. He never asked again. That night, I sat at the writing desk under the brass lamp. I dated the page, May 23rd, 2011. In the bottom right corner of the page, I drew a small 5-point star in pencil, the same way I had drawn it every night since the autumn of 1985. I had drawn the first one for a child who never opened his eyes, a boy, November 4th, 1985, stillborn at 38 weeks. I do not say his name aloud, but I drew a star for him that first night, and by the third night I had decided the star would be for him and for whatever came next. David was what came next. He arrived in our arms 6 weeks old in March of 1986 from a private adoption agency in Bangor. We told him when he was old enough to understand. He chose us back. He never asked about the boy before him. He let that door stay closed. That was a kindness only he could have given me. Sunday morning, Bess Calloway came up the drive with 2 thermoses of coffee. Bess was 73 then, retired postmistress of Stoneharbor Cove. We walked down to the rocks below the lighthouse, the 3 of us. David had his face turned toward the open water.
So, Davy, you staying this time?
As long as she'll have me, Bess. As long as she'll have me. You know that is the only answer I have ever given to that question.
We walked back up the rocks, slow, and the lighthouse beam started its evening sweep early because the fog was rolling in. Prux, I remember thinking very clearly that I was happy, not the loud kind, the slow kind, the kind that has earned its place at the table. The years that followed were small. David repaired his father's boat and repainted the trim every other June. The journal pages filled. The star was the constant. 6 years of small days. I thought small days were what we had earned. Volume 13, Volume 14, Volume 15, Volume 16. Each page had its small star in the bottom right corner. Some nights I wrote a paragraph. Some nights I wrote 1 line. The star was the door I left open in the dark. He brought graduate students home sometimes, young people from Orono who slept in the spare room and ate my chowder and called me Mrs. Holloway until I told them to stop. I told them to call me Martha. Most of them listened. Christmases came and went. We had summer porches. We had the kind of disagreements that families have when they are comfortable enough to say a true thing badly and then sit with it until it comes right. He watched me draw the star every night without asking why. That was David. He did not need to understand everything. He needed to know the thing still existed. As long as I was drawing the star, the door was still open. As long as the door was still open, he knew what kind of house he had come home to. On the morning of October 14th, 2018, the weather radio in my kitchen crackled at 6:15. A storm system off the Grand Banks. The forecast used the words rapid intensification. The sky was the color of wet slate. I did not know yet that the small days had ended. I would not know for another 14 hours. He came down the stairs at 7:15 in the yellow foul-weather gear his father had bought him. He poured coffee into the steel thermos and stood reading the marine forecast off his phone.
Mom, I have to run out to Mooney Ledge. 2 sensor units. If I do not pull them before this thing makes landfall, I lose the whole season's data. 3 hours tops. The radio always says rapid intensification, Mom. It always does. I will be back by lunch.
He kissed the top of my head the way he had done since he was tall enough to reach it. I smelled coffee and salt and the laundry soap I had used since the 80s. He picked up the thermos. The screen door slapped shut behind him. I have replayed that small slap of the door more times than I have drawn stars. I stood at the kitchen window and watched his truck go up the coast road. The wind had begun. The harbor flags were standing straight out. I set the table for 2, but the second chair by evening would still be empty. By 9, the sky was the color of an old bruise. By 10, the rain was sideways. By 11, the harbor sirens were being tested, and the small boats that were going to be hauled were already on trailers in driveways up and down the cove. My phone rang at 11:17. It was Bess. Bess asked if I had heard from him. I said not yet. He had said 3 hours. He would be back. We hung up. I stood at the window and watched the rain come horizontal across the harbor and told myself that the small slap of the screen door was not the last sound I would ever hear him make. By 4, it was full dark, 3 hours early. By 6, the power was out. I lit the kerosene lamp. I kept the radio on the battery channel. I did not understand most of the Coast Guard chatter, but I understood the tone. The tone was wrong. At 8:14, the Marine Band reported a distress beacon from a small research vessel north of Mooney Ledge. I knew the registration before they read it. I knew it the way you know your own phone number. I sat down at the kitchen table. I did not move from that chair for 3 hours and 33 minutes. At 11:47, there were 3 knocks at the door. Slow, polite. A man who had done this before.
Mrs. Holloway, may I come in? Ma'am, I am Officer Owen Trask, Coast Guard, Stoneharbor Station. Your son's vessel transmitted a distress beacon at 2014 hours. The signal lasted 11 seconds. It went silent. We have a debris field 3 miles north of the ledge. We have a life jacket, auto-inflated, empty. We have not located the boat. We have not located your son. Search will resume at first light.
I had sat down at the kitchen table before he could ask me to. I knew, the way you know. He took off his cap. He sat in the chair across from me, the chair where David had sat that morning. I did not cry. I have wondered why for 7 years. I had cried already in 1985 for a child whose name I do not say aloud, and I had not yet recovered enough water for a second flood. I thanked Officer Trask for coming himself. He left. The screen door slapped shut. The same screen door. I sat at the kitchen table until the gray came up through the window. At dawn, I went to the writing desk in my bedroom. The journal was open to the night before. I had drawn the star already, the one for October 14th. I sat down. I dated the new page. October 15th, 2018. I picked up the pencil. I got one diagonal line down, the first stroke of a 5-point star. My hand stopped. I could not finish it. I told myself I would draw one when he came back. I closed the book on the unfinished line. I did not open volume 17 again for 7 years. Six weeks later, Officer Trask came back to the cottage. He had a brown paper evidence bag in his hand. Inside was a torn navy slicker. He told me, quietly, that the lab had confirmed the blood on the cuff. It was a match to the sample David had provided when he registered the vessel. He said he was very sorry. He had wanted to bring it to me himself. I touched the sleeve. The wool was salt stiff. There was a small tear at the elbow that I had mended in the spring of 2017. The thread was still my thread. I whispered, "Yes, that is his." I nodded once. I think that nod was the first thing in my body that broke. That was the day the world's noise became one long unbroken sound. And I forgot what silence had ever felt like. The funeral was on a Saturday in late November at the small white clapboard church on the bluff. There was no body. There was a framed photograph on the table in front of the altar. David at the helm of his boat, squinting into the sun.
We do not gather today to make sense of the sea. We gather to remind each other that the man we loved walked among us, and we walked among him, and that walking together is itself a kind of prayer that does not require an answer.
Bess held my elbow through the entire service. I do not remember most of it. I remember the way the light came in through the high east windows and made small bright squares on the wood floor. I remember thinking very clearly that the squares were moving slowly and the world had become a place where the only thing that moved on schedule was light. 18 months later, the state of Maine declared David legally dead. I signed the paper at Bess's kitchen table because I could not do it at mine. Bess made me a grilled cheese sandwich after I signed. I ate it. I did not taste it. She watched me eat it. That is what she does. What followed were the 7 silent years. I walked the beach alone. I tutored fishermen's children on Saturdays. I kept the herb garden. Bess came over with chowder when she felt like I had not made enough for myself. She was usually right. The journal sat on the writing desk, open to October 15th, 2018. I dusted around it. I never wrote in it. I told myself I would draw the star when he came back. I told myself I would not draw a lie. 2019, 20, 21, 22, 23. In 24, I turned 70. Bess made a cake. I blew out the candles. I did not make a wish. I had stopped making wishes in 2018. 2021. Bess fell on the ice in February and broke her wrist, and I drove her to the hospital and held her good hand in the waiting room and did not tell her how much I needed that hand to hold back. 2022. Pastor Renfrew's wife passed in October. I brought a casserole. He thanked me with his eyes more than his mouth. 2023. The Lighthouse needed a new lens, and the town held a fundraiser, and I baked 9 loaves of yeast bread for the bake sale, because 9 is what my mother always made when she did not know what else to do with her hands. In the spring of 2025, on a Wednesday afternoon, Bess sat at my kitchen table with a mug of black coffee and looked at me a long time before she spoke.
Martha, you are still not writing in it. Maybe it is time. I do not say this to push you. I say it because you have been still for a long time, and there is a difference between standing still and being settled, and I am not yet sure which one you are.
I did not answer her. I looked out the kitchen window at the lighthouse. The beam was not yet on. It was 3 in the afternoon. The harbor was glassy. The fishing boats sat at their moorings the way they always do. I had become very good at standing still. I had not yet learned the difference between standing still and being a marker. I would learn it on a Tuesday, 8 days later at 4:07 in the afternoon, when a truck I did not recognize pulled into my gravel drive. It was a Tuesday in May, 2025. I was on the porch deadheading the geraniums in the long terracotta box. I had been thinking about nothing in particular. That, I have decided, is how the largest things in a life arrive. They wait until you are thinking about geraniums. The truck was unfamiliar. A dark green pickup, older model, Nova Scotia plates. It rolled up the gravel slow, the way you drive when you are not yet sure whether you are welcome. It stopped halfway up the drive. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out, tall, broad in the shoulder. Sandy, brown hair threaded with premature gray. He had a small white scar through his right eyebrow, where he had fallen off the dock at the age of 9. I had stitched that eyebrow myself in the kitchen sink. The shears fell from my hand. I heard them hit the porch boards. I did not look down. Behind him, on the passenger side, the door opened more carefully. A small boy in a too large green parka stepped out. He held the door handle a long second before he let it go. He looked at the man. The man nodded. The boy stepped onto the gravel and stood very still. I had imagined this moment so many times across 7 years that I had worn the imagining smooth. The real one was nothing like any of them. The real one had a child. He came up the gravel walk slowly. He stopped at the bottom step of the porch. He took off his cap. He held it in both hands. He did not come up the steps.
Mom, I owe you everything I'm about to say. I have been practicing it for 7 years. May I come up? His name is Caleb. May we come inside, Mom? I would like to sit at your table when I tell you.
I did not move. I do not think I breathed. I think the only part of me that worked was the part that had been listening for that one syllable for 2,437 nights. I nodded. I do not remember nodding. He came up the steps. He stopped 2 feet from me. He did not reach for me. He had decided somewhere on the long drive down from Nova Scotia that he would not touch me until I gave him permission. That decision told me how badly he had been carrying what he was about to carry. I looked at the boy by the truck. He stood with his hands in his parka pockets. He did not come closer. He was watching us the way you watch weather. You do not yet know how to read. We went inside. I do not remember walking through the door. I remember the kitchen. I remember setting 3 teacups on the saucers I have used since 1994. I remember pouring boiling water over the chamomile bag in each cup. I remember my hand was steady. The boy sat at the end of the table by the window. He held his teacup with both hands and did not drink. He looked at the journal on the writing desk across the room, the one still open to October 15th, 2018. He looked at it the way a child looks at something he has been told about for a long time. David sat across from me. He set his cap on the chair beside him. He folded his hands on the table. He took one long breath. He began.
Mom, I want you to know first that the storm was real. The boat was real. I really did go out to Mooney Ledge that morning. The distress beacon was real. The wave that took the wheelhouse off was real. Everything up to 8:14 at night on October 14th, 2018 was real. After 8:14 I made a choice. I want you to hear that word from me. Choice. I do not want you to hear any other word for it.
He told me what came next. He told it slow. He told it the way you tell a child a story they will need to remember when they are older.
The wave took the wheelhouse. I went into the water in the survival suit. I was in the water for 11 hours. At 7 in the morning, on October 15th, a small fishing skiff out of a place called Penobscot Island, off the south coast of Nova Scotia, found me. The man at the wheel was named Hollis Whitaker. He pulled me into his boat. He did not radio it in because as soon as he had me on the deck, he saw what I was wearing around my neck. He saw this. Dad gave me this key on my 18th birthday. He took me out to the Lighthouse rocks. He put it in my hand. He said, "If anything ever happens to you, son, find a man named Whitaker on Penobscot Island. He will know." I did not understand. He said, "You do not need to know yet. Just keep it on you." He made me promise. I have kept it on me since 1993. Even in the water that night, the chain held. Hollis took me to his cottage. He poured me coffee. He looked at the key for a long minute. Then he said, "Son, do you know who you are?" "Mom, in 1986, when you and Dad adopted me from the agency in Bangor, you were told there was one baby. There were two."
He reached under his collar and pulled out a small brass key on a thin silver chain. He set it on the kitchen table. It was old, tarnished. I had been married to that man for 34 years. I had not known about the key. My husband had carried a secret for me on my behalf into the ground. But I have learned, since that afternoon, that there are secrets that betray and secrets that keep watch. He had kept watch. The key had been a small brass promise. I set the teacup down very carefully. I had not heard the word twin spoken in this house in 40 years. I had not let myself think it. The agency in 1986 had told us one baby. We had brought home one baby. We had loved one baby. I had not asked the question that would have changed the answer.
The agency placed the second baby with the Whitaker family. They lived on Penobscot Island. They were good people. They raised him. His name was Samuel. Samuel Whitaker. He grew up. He went to school in Halifax. He became a high school history teacher. He married a woman named Eleanor. They had a son in 2013. His son's name is Caleb. Samuel passed in 2017. An aneurysm. He was 31 years old. He went to bed on a Sunday night, and he did not wake up. Eleanor had passed of breast cancer the year before. Caleb was 4. He had no other family on his mother's side. On his father's side there was Hollis, and Hollis was already old. And there was a paternal uncle. The uncle, Mom, had 2 assault convictions and 1 methamphetamine conviction. He was pursuing custody. Letters I never opened because I never knew they were addressed to me. He sent them through the agency. The agency held them. They told me later that legally they could not deliver them because the second baby's adoption had been a closed file and you had been told it was a single placement. Hollis was 80 when I came up out of the water onto his deck. He had been waiting for the sea to bring me to him. He had been praying for it for 2 years.
The boy at the end of the table did not move. He had heard this story before. He was hearing it now in front of the woman it had been hidden from. David kept going. He had practiced it for 7 years.
I sat at Hollis's table. He showed me a photograph of Samuel. Mom, Samuel had my face. He had Dad's jaw. He had your eyes. He showed me a photograph of Caleb. Caleb was 4. He was holding a wooden pencil case with a hand-carved star on the lid. Hollis had carved one for each boy when they were born. I asked Hollis what he wanted me to do. He said, "The uncle is going to win. The boy has no one. You are the only blood the boy has left who is not in a courtroom." He said, "But if you walk into that courtroom as David Holloway, marine biologist, alive, the uncle's lawyers will spend 3 years dragging your mother through every newspaper on the eastern seaboard. They will turn her grief into a circus." Hollis said, "Son, I am asking you to disappear so this child can live."
The kitchen was very quiet. I could hear the lighthouse foghorn somewhere out past the harbor mouth. It was 3 notes, the same 3 notes since 1962.
"Mom, I am so sorry. I made the choice in Hollis's kitchen at 4 in the afternoon on October 15th, 2018. I tore the slicker on the rocks that night and let the tide take it back south. I knew you would have the answer you needed to begin grieving cleanly. I thought a clean grief was the best gift I could give you. I was 32 years old when I made that choice. I have been asking myself every morning since whether I had the right. I raised him, Mom, under the name Daniel Whitaker. We lived in Hollis's cottage until Hollis passed in 2020. Then we moved to a smaller place on the North Shore. Caleb went to the small school on the island. He learned to read on a copy of Make Way for Ducklings I had stolen from your shelf the last summer I was home. He thought it was a book about Maine. He thought we were going to Maine someday. I wrote you letters every month. I never sent them. 284 of them. The uncle was sentenced to 12 years this March. The other relative passed of a heart attack in January. There is no one left to come for Caleb, so I came home.
32. I never told you how old I was when I made the choice to carry what I carried. Your father knew. He knew, and he kept it for me. And he kept the key for you. He kept what he could not name. I sat with that for a long moment. Hollis had kept watch from the other shore. My husband had kept watch from this one. The boy I had chosen had kept watch in a storm. I had been kept by more people than I had known to count. That is what a small life looks like when you stand far enough back to see it. I was looking at the brass key on the table. I was thinking about my husband, who had given that key to a son who was not by blood ours, and had said the words, "If anything ever happens," as if he had known. As if some quiet part of him had always known there was a second door waiting in the dark. I looked at the boy at the end of the table. He had been so still, I had almost forgotten he was there. A small boy in a too large green parka, sandy hair like David's, a chipped front tooth, a face that did not yet know what it was supposed to do. And then he stood up. He took a folded piece of paper from the pocket of his too large parka. He walked the 4 steps to my end of the table. He placed it in front of me. He stood there with his hands at his sides. I unfolded it slowly. It was a child's drawing, a single 5-point star, pencil, slightly crooked. In careful block letters above the star were the words, "For the lady in the picture."
Daddy David said you would know what it meant.
I looked up at the boy. He was standing so close I could see the small freckle on his earlobe. He had my eyes, pale blue, ringed slightly darker at the edge of the iris. The kind of eyes my own mother had, and my mother's mother. The kind of eyes I had seen in 1985 for 1/2 of 1 second, in a small face that was not breathing. The boy I had raised was not my blood. The boy I had never known existed was, and the man who was not my blood had spent 7 years keeping the boy who was alive and waiting and drawing my stars on the back of lined notebook paper. I reached across the table, past David's hands, past the brass key, past the teacup. I took the small hand of the boy in the too large parka. I held it. There was nothing to say. I looked at David. His shoulders dropped. They dropped the way a man's shoulders drop. After he's been holding something heavy for 7 years and has finally been told he can put it down. Outside the window, the lighthouse beam began its evening sweep. It crossed the kitchen table and fell across 3 pairs of hands. We sat there until the chamomile had gone cold. David put the brass key back around his neck. Caleb went out to the porch and watched the lighthouse beam start its rounds. David and I cleared the cups. He washed, I dried, the way we had since he was 9. After supper, Caleb fell asleep on the daybed in the front parlor. David covered him with the green wool throw. He sat with him for a long time. He had things to say to that boy that I was not meant to hear. I was glad of it. I went to the writing desk in my bedroom. I had not sat at it in 7 years. The wood was the same. The lamp was the same. The journal was the same. Open to October 15th, 2018. The unfinished diagonal line was still there, faded slightly, still pencil, still half a star. I sat down. I picked up the pencil. The pencil felt the way the pencil had always felt. I put the tip on the page where the unfinished line ended. I drew the next line, the descent from the right point to the lower left. Slow, steady, then the line across to the lower right, then back up to the start. The star closed. 7 years is a long time to leave a sentence half-spoken. The pencil remembered what to do. I turned the page. Volume 17 had 87 blank pages remaining. The next blank page was waiting for me the way a clean blackboard waits for the first piece of chalk on the first morning of a new school year. I dated it, May 13th, 2025. I wrote a single line. He came home, and he brought one with him. I drew a star. In the bottom right corner, 5 points, pencil, under half an inch, the way I had drawn it 10,474 times. Then I picked up the small folded paper Caleb had set on the kitchen table. His drawing, the careful block letters. I unfolded it once. I laid it flat in the journal beside the new star, and I closed the book gently over it. The book was thicker now. I think it should be. There was a small sound at the bedroom doorway. I turned. Caleb stood there in the pajamas David had pulled out of the duffel for him. The pajamas were blue with small white sailboats. They were too large. The sleeves came down past his fingertips.
Are you doing the star, ma'am? May I help?
I smiled. I think it was the first time my whole face had smiled all the way through since the morning of October 14th, 2018. I told him yes. He came across the bedroom in his two long pajamas and sat on my lap. He was light. I gave him the pencil. I told him, right there, by the corner, 5 points, as slow as you like. He drew it slowly. He stuck out the tip of his tongue the way children do when they are concentrating on something that matters to them. The star came out slightly crooked. The bottom right point was longer than the others. The lines were not all the same weight. It was the most correct star that has ever been drawn in that journal. I will fight anyone who says otherwise. He drew it like a child draws every important thing, like he was building something that had to last. He looked up at me when he was finished. He looked up at me with my own pale blue eyes. I whispered to him that he had done it perfectly. That he had done it perfectly. We sat in the small lamplight for a long time after that. He leaned back against my chest. I could feel his small heart through the pajama shirt. I could feel my own heart through the cardigan. The two of them did not match exactly. They did not need to. They were in the same room. The next morning, Pastor Tobias Renfrew sat at my kitchen table, listening to David tell as much of the story as a man can tell before breakfast. When David got to the brass key, the pastor closed his eyes for a long minute. He took it well. He has always taken things well.
Martha, in 37 years of this work, I have learned that the Lord is not in the business of returning what is lost. He is in the business of returning what is asked. You did not ask for what you lost. You asked every night for 40 years, with a small pencil mark for what was coming. He sent you what was coming. I have buried a great many people in this town, Martha. I buried your husband. I stood at the lectern for the empty funeral. I have not, in all those years, seen a story go from where yours was to where it is now. I do not know what to call it. I am sure the seminary has a word for it. I am sure the seminary is wrong. What I do know is this: the faithful keeping of a small habit across a long silence is not a small thing. It is, I think, the most underrated form of prayer we have.
I told Tobias I thought he was right. I think he was. Bess arrived at 10 with a chicken casserole and an expression that said she had heard the news. She came through the screen door without knocking. She set the casserole on the stove. She saw David standing by the kitchen window. Her hands went up to her mouth.
You absolute fool of a boy. Get yourself over here 7 years, Davy. 7 of them. I delivered the mail to her every blessed morning of those years, and I watched her get smaller. Do not ever do that to a Maine woman again. Not ever. Now, hush. Hush and let an old woman hold you.
She crossed the kitchen in 4 steps, and she hugged him the way you hug someone you have been planning to hug for a long time without knowing it. She pretended she was not crying. David pretended he did not notice. That is, I have decided what love looks like in a coastal village in Maine. The town would know within 48 hours. The town was kind. Stoneharbor had grieved with me for 7 years. It was time to give them something else to do. Late that afternoon, Caleb and I walked down to the rocks below the lighthouse. David stayed at the cottage to call a real estate agent. He was selling the small house on the north shore. He was coming home. The tide was halfway in. The fog had begun to come in soft from the south. I held Caleb's mittened hand. I told him gently about the brother his father never knew he had, about the night in 1985 when a woman drew a star for a child whose name she did not say. I told him she had drawn a star every night since, for him and for whatever came next. He listened. He looked up at the lighthouse beam. He looked back at me. He asked, very small, if the star had always been for him too. I told him it had always been for whoever was coming. That evening, we came back up to the cottage. David had built a fire. Bess had stayed. The kitchen smelled of chicken and onion. Caleb fell asleep again on the daybed before dessert. David carried him up to the spare room, the room that had been his since he was 8 years old, and tucked him in under the quilt my own mother had made in 1964. I sat on the porch in the wicker rocker after Bess had gone home. David came out and sat in the rocker beside me. The lighthouse beam swept across the porch boards every 12 seconds. After a while, he reached over and took my hand.
I thought I was giving you a clean grief, Mom. I thought a clean grief was the kindest thing I could leave you with. I was wrong about that. I am sorry I was wrong about that. I think the worst part of the 7 years was not the pretending. It was the writing of letters I never sent. 284 of them. I sat down every month at the small kitchen table on the island, and I wrote you about the boy, about the way he had grown, about the small things. And then I folded the letter and put it in the box. I do not know what I want to do with them now.
You were 32, sweetheart. You did what you thought love was asking you to do. You can do what you like with the letters. Burn them in the wood stove. Keep them in the box. Read me one a month for 284 months if you want. I will be here, or some of those months I will not be, and Caleb will be, and you can read them to him. Now love asks only this: stay. That is all. That is the whole of it. Just stay. I have learned late that there are 2 kinds of love that look like each other from a distance, and they are not the same. There is love by blood, the kind that arrives in the small face of a child whose eyes are your own. Then there is love by choosing, the kind that walks up your gravel drive in March of 1986 and stays, the kind that mends its own torn slicker, the kind that disappears into a Nova Scotia fog for 7 years to keep a child safe. I have been told all my life that blood is thicker than water. I have come to believe that love is thicker than either. I spent 40 years thinking the star was a marker for what I had lost. I was wrong. It was the frequency at which the noise of the world finally fell silent. The moment I drew it again, with the boy I never knew sleeping in the next room, and the boy I had raised holding my hand on the porch, I stopped being a sharpened blade. I became a standing stone, the kind that stays. Blood is one kind of love. Choosing is another. Freischnitt. The deepest is the kind that walks back into the fog to bring both home. It is late autumn now. Caleb is enrolled at the small school down by the harbor. He sits in the third row by the window, in the same seat David sat in the year 1993. He draws stars in the margins of his math homework. His teacher pretends not to notice. She used to be in my 4th grade class. She remembers what stars and margins mean. David has bought back his old boat. He is repainting the trim, the same blue it has been since 1999. He brings me beach roses on Friday afternoons. He still has not said why. He told Caleb once that his father had said the wild beach roses were the most stubborn flower in the state of Maine, that they grew where nothing else could. He remembered that on the island. He remembered it when he started writing the letters. Every evening, at the small writing desk under the brass lamp, I open volume 17. I draw a small 5-point star in pencil. Most nights now, Caleb draws one beside mine. His are still slightly crooked. I prefer them that way. On Sundays, all 3 of us draw 3 stars side by side along the corner of the page. Then we close the book together, the way you close a door at the end of a long, good day. The lighthouse keeps sweeping. The journal stays open. The star is waiting for tomorrow night. If this story found you at the right moment, you are always welcome here. This is the Porch Light. We will be here when you need us.